Hello, everyone. I hope you're having an amazing time at Anthro Northwest. My name is Jake Vela, and I am a PhD candidate. I'm studying sociology at Texas Women's University, where I also work in the Career Connection Center there as well. I have actually been doing some research on the furry fandom over the past year and a half, and today is going to be a little bit about my research. So thank you so much for your interest in sticking around for an academic presentation. But at the same time, as you might be able to tell from the presentation title, this is also a performance. I'm what's known as like an arts-based researcher, and so I sort of combine art and social science to present data and conclusions in sort of alternative ways. Again, I really appreciate you stopping by and hanging out with me. So we'll go ahead and get started. To specify, I will present my research questions to you so you know exactly what was driving my data collection and my analysis. And my questions were really just, what does it mean for furries to belong while attending specifically Texas Furry Fiesta 2019? And how do furries experience this social connection at Texas Furry Fiesta? And lastly, what in particular makes furries feel included? Part of the reason I wanted to conduct a study on furries is it's a fairly like new kind of topic in a sense because there's not a whole lot of academic literature, and most of the literature out there really exists by kind of a cohort of researchers, which have, I cannot say how thankful I am to them because they've just done so much work, laying the groundwork for everyone else, really. Another thing is I wanted to particularly take a qualitative approach in this aspect because a lot of the research I found on furries is really quantitative based, which is amazing. I mean, that's absolutely necessary, but nothing quite got to what I was looking for. And then the last thing, really the driving force again for this study is the idea of combining an arts-based research approach with this fandom. When I say arts-based research, there's a sort of kind of guiding philosophy to learn how to combine art and science and how to combine it well. But before I get into all that, I think it's important to know kind of where I'm coming from. In all qualitative research, you're likely going to find people kind of giving you some reflexivity statements or telling you a little bit about themselves so that you can understand maybe what has influenced their analyses in that project. And so some things that I definitely feel are influential in my analyses are the fact that, I'm kind of holding several ideas of what knowledge means and how can it really be found. And so I kind of hold like a social constructionist orientation where we co-create knowledge with each other, we co-create meaning with each other. So in terms of a research project, there's really not a way for the researcher to be detached from the data or objective in this particular philosophical stance. So the interpretation of data is always considering the participants' experiences, but also the researcher's own influences. Another influence that has kind of emerged in my research is something known as new materialism. And it's really about seeing how just matter plays a role in our interactions. And by matter, I really mean like physical things around you. And not so much in a symbolic sense, but literally in a sense of, this chair is uncomfortable after 20 minutes, so I get up and I move to something else. Things like that. We're kind of co-creating this reality with our matter. And so those are some influences in my research in terms of the philosophical and epistemological orientations that I took. But some other things that are definitely influential are just some of my identities. So I'm still a student. I'm a PhD candidate. I'm working on my dissertation right now. So I'm still learning and growing. And I'm also gay. I'm Latino. And I do self-identify as a furry. My first convention was in 2017, and that was actually more of me trying to urge my husband to go and experience it because he had recently told me about his furry identity. And I was like, hey, there's this awesome convention here in Dallas, and let's go. I mean, we live in Dallas, so why not? And that's really kind of where all of this intrigue and interest started. So the remainder of this is going to be a little bit about some furry research that's already been conducted, and then we'll jump into my study. There are a lot of misconceptions, a lot of stigma and marginalizing perspectives that go around in media, especially mainstream media and things like that. And I think it's important to quickly acknowledge those. Some of the misconceptions are the fact that people think furries, just a sexual fetish or something like that. And the research that has come out has really suggested otherwise overall, and that, tech might be a part of it for folks, but really the part of the fandom is about belongingness and seeking entertainment and enjoying entertainment with others. Those have been actually some of the stronger motivators for participating in the fandom, according to some researchers. Another thing is that people often think that furries identify as animals, and that's not quite accurate. That there's another term for that, Therians, who may identify like as another animal, or otherkin that may identify like as another like mystical creature or something like out of this world. Um, but really, in fact, only about a third of furries believe that they are animals or believe themselves to be less than humans. Another one is really interesting too, and it's fursuits. People think like, oh, furries are fursuiters. And that's also not totally the case. The reality of the data suggests that most don't have a fursuit. In fact, only about maybe 13%. The number might be a little different now, but it's a really small percentage that have a full body, like mascot style costume. And then with that, I want to say like, I don't have it on my side, but like I want to say like 40 to 50% have maybe like an accessory, like tails, head, etc., things like that. So, again, another misconception that's often propagated through media or just kind of stigma in general. And then the last thing is there's a misconception that furries are like weird or psychologically unwell or something like that, dysfunctional. And again, the research comes back to say otherwise, and furries are actually similar to non-furries in terms of well-being, self-esteem, psychological health, and in some cases, have a stronger sense of identity. So I like to discuss those misconceptions because they're important and they do impact our identities and how we might feel if we want to participate in a community that is stigmatized or something like that. And so if you're not familiar with the term stigma, it's just like a negative association with your identity, or it's kind of like a spoiled identity, as Irving Goffman would say. And that's definitely something that drives people like not to maybe speak out about their identity because they are fearful about social rejection or fearful about retaliation at their job or school or in their family, something like that. And so it's really no surprise that there's a large portion of furries who, conceal their identity in one way or another. And I think that leads kind of into the benefits of being a part of the community. Paradoxically, the furry fandom might be socially perceived as a stigmatized group to others or to mainstream media, etc., but also participating in the fandom can actually buffer against some of the negative effects that result from stigma and from the negative cultural influences. So community participation can actually help develop a greater sense of identity, which that could also lead into greater disclosure of your identity, because if you start feeling good about the people you hang out with, and you see yourself as kind of this group member, you feel good about that identity, you start sharing it more with others, and that leads to an increase in opportunities to experience more positive mental and psychological outcomes. The other thing about being a part of the furry community is, as I mentioned earlier, belongingness is really a motivating factor. And that's really my favorite aspect of pretty much all social sciences and in sociology, social psychology, etc. is how do people feel like they belong and what makes them feel like they belong. And one really fascinating aspect of the furry community or the furry fandom is that there are so many ways to engage. Most people engage online, and some do like local meetup groups, things like that. But the research suggests that about 50% of furries report at least some regular attendance at furry conventions, which can range up to thousands of people. So I was really interested in learning more about how people feel connected and feel included and how they feel like they belong while they're attending these really large events that have so much going on. People go for different reasons. It's, to socialize, of course, it's to express yourself, your furry identity or gender identity expression, etc. It's to feel like you belong in the community. And these are all such evident contributions to like positive experiences for furries because of that notion of post-con depression. It's so real, and there's some studies on it as well, and it's when people kind of get hit with that reality of like, oh, I have to go back to like the real world. So I conducted a study on actually it's part of a larger study, but it's basically it's a small sample of 4 individuals, and I conducted in-depth interviews, and I used an approach called grounded theory to kind of create a theoretical explanation of the experiences that these participants had and encountered at Texas Furry Fiesta. So I'll go into a little bit more detail about that. So the folks that I recruited, it happened to be 4 males. They range from age 18 to 30. 3 of them identified as white, and 1 of them identified as Latino Hispanic. 2 identified as straight, 1 identified as questioning, and 1 identified as bisexual. And the education ranged from like high school completion to master's completion. With these participants, I conducted semi-structured interviews that lasted roughly about an hour and a half each. 3 out of the 4 were video-based, and 1 out of the 4 was just audio. I recorded the audio and transcribed it, and I then conducted a data analysis. But before I get into that, I wanted to go over a little bit over the context of the setting because that plays a big part. So Texas Furry Fiesta 2019, it was like a 3 to 4 day conference. There was some stuff on that Thursday evening, but really it's like Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And nearly 5,000 people attended. It was held in a really nice, like elegant hotel with nice restaurants and like a nice bar. And there were just multiple con activities, and on multiple floors. There was like a basement floor, the main lobby floor, the second like atrium floor, and then of course there was social get-togethers, etc., like all throughout the hotel, and like private parties, things like that. It also had really inclusive hotel staff. The hotel staff really seemed to be engaged and happy to have the furry fandom there for the weekend. They even had like inclusive like gender signs that they made specifically for like bathrooms, specifically for furries. It was really awesome. So now I'll tell you a little bit more about my participants for the study. Adam, he's a scholar, grad student. We connected quickly over our interest in the research of like furries and just kind of research in general. We were kind of geeking out. He really looked to developing strong emotional connections, and that was really important for him. And so he did discuss kind of how every time he's been going to like something like a big event like this, his pool of network would increase. The next is Bernardo. He's youthful and spirited, interested in furry psychology. It was his first ever furry event attended, and he saw the furry fandom as like a place of support and um, comfort, and that's something that he really didn't have a lot of in his personal life. Um, the next one was Colton. He was actually my first contact at Texas Furry Fiesta. Just randomly met. Um, we just started talking. He told me he was his first furry event, etc. He did have the most kind of reserved responses, but after some probing, it really seemed like he really appreciated how the fandom facilitated new friendships for him. And then finally, we have Dawn. I did not meet Dawn at Texas Furry Fiesta. I did meet all the other ones, but Dawn reached out to me, got a flyer, and Dawn is a fursuiter, enjoys like the physical affection of the fandom, like hugs and like the big fursuit hugs, things like that. And something that really made Dawn feel included was when people asked to take a picture. And so all that being said, I transcribed all of the audio that I recorded from these interviews, and I used a grounded theory approach to kind of find emergent themes in the data. And I really started finding some really interesting things about when people felt included and how. And that is exactly what I wanted to know. But before I get into the actual results, I wanted to say that this portion of the data analysis was actually driven by the arts-based research I was talking about. And I wanted to create music to represent the data because I found that there were no arts-based research contributions to the literature, yet furries are such a creative group. They're so involved in the creation, production, and admiration of art that I thought it would be so awesome to be able to couple this social science project with a arts-based project that represented the results. And so I chose music mainly because I feel like music allows you to feel. It allows you to experience empathy and lived experience of others more easily than kind of just reading words. I also feel like with music you can feel the data rather than, again, just kind of process it mentally. And there's a lot of emotion and meaning interpretation in music. And so, as I mentioned before, of kind of like my epistemological influences, I think meaning interpretation is important for both the researcher and participant and for the consumer of the research to kind of find other meanings that may have been, missed or not taken into consideration at that time. And lastly, I chose music because I feel like music has this intuitive relationship with data. And what I mean by that is there are layers of data that suggest certain information. And just like with music, you can layer, vocals and lyrics and actual like melodies. And all of these kind of integrate and come together so they can have meanings on their own, but then put together they have kind of this picture of belonging that I really loved. And so, like I mentioned, it was inspired by a found poem method where I took the transcripts, I pulled out these themes of like active belonging, of internalized belonging where people felt validated, and the setting as well. And I organized these themes based on the phrases that the participants used. And I put those kind of phrases together to kind of make the basis of like a song with lyrics. And then I just kind of based on inspiration from the feeling that I got from the participant and their meaning, I developed chord progressions that I believe evoke those emotions and those feelings as well. And lastly, I adapted some of the phrases just for a melodic flow so that I could still maintain their meaning, but also incorporate kind of more traditional musical elements such as rhyming, the way things flow, things like that. And based on the findings, well, I have two songs that I would like to play for you. I'm pulling in. Yeah, I caught a glimpse. There's so many of us. Furries abound, walking around. I wish I suited. Furries are cuddly, passing out hugs in front of me. We're suddenly friends now. We took over this hotel, so if you are by yourself, we're here to hang out. Follow me, and I'll take you to all the places where we'll laugh, we'll sing, we'll dance until that last song. Come and meet all these wonderful furry faces, and we'll have a roll, we'll cheer all weekend long. This is where I belong. If you're feeling lonely, don't let your anxiety stop you in your tracks. We made fantastic friends, we're here to do it again. It's why we all come back. Furries are cuddly, passing out hugs in front of me. Suddenly friends now. We took over this hotel, so if you are by yourself, we're here to hang out. Follow me, and I'll take you to all the places where we'll laugh, we'll sing, we'll dance until that last song. Come and meet all these wonderful furry faces, and we'll howl, we'll roll, we'll cheer all weekend long. This is where I belong. So that song is a depiction of the excitement leading up to the Texas Furry Fiesta 2019, where my participants expressed a consensus of kind of anticipation, not knowing what to expect, kind of a little anxiety of, am I gonna, have something out with, things like that. And then the days just took them with social activities, and the excitement they expressed in their experiences resonated and really all culminated into these sense of active belonging. So the next song I have is called This Defines Me. Watching in from the fringes, didn't mean to keep such a distance. I've been swallowing fears I've held in for years, but I'm still shy. Am I missing out, or getting lost in a crowd? Since we're fans of each other, I hope it's no bother. I say hello. I'd be so excited if I were invited to a game of cards, a drink at the bar to make new friends. I feel so delighted cruising around the dealer's den, just trying to take it all in. This community of folks just like me, right, makes sense. Oh, it's normal to be weird. Hey, that's why we're all here, asking for more pics of these anthropomorphic furry things. I'm so excited. Yeah, I was invited. They pointed me out as what I'm about. I'm feeling free. I'm so delighted. I'm so glad I tried it. Quick little chats, I made friends real fast. This defines me. So that piece, just like the other one, originated from the participants' experiences, their stories, and they all shared this element of it, this kind of bittersweet sense. It's, you're around so many people, but at the same time you can feel like you don't want to be left out, and that there's so much to do and there's so much going on, and you just kind of need the hand reaching out to you and pulling you in. And that was more the passive or internalized belonging, to feel validated, to feel included. So not even to having participated in something, but just the fact that other people, knew who you were or reached out to you, things like that. Something that emerged in the research. The idea that belonging exists not just in the active participation or in the internalized validation of, being someone who's invited to participate or something like that. It was also a lot about the setting. And I don't know if you got that through the songs, but just the sites, the social architecture in the building itself, or the sites of furries and their fursuits, things like that. The aesthetic, if you will, really did play a part in that sense of being a part of something greater and larger, and that desire to feel like you belong. With that said, references for any academic nerds like myself who like them. And if you want to keep in touch with me, this is my information. Again, my name is Jakin Vela. I also go by Satros, especially when I'm doing like performances like this. But there is my info. Feel free to reach out to me, and I really thank you again for watching this and participating, and I would be absolutely thrilled to hear from you. All right. Well, you have a fantastic rest of your Anthro Northwest con, and I will see y'all later. Bye.